able to join us. Welcome, good morning. Welcome to Finders Keepers, what you can do to find and keep employees. We're going to be talking about recruiting and retaining staff and workforce this morning. So we're happy that you're all able to join us. This is the second, in a series of 3 workshops being put on by the East Central Regional Development Commission, the SBDC, and the Women's Business Alliance. The next workshop we have is on August 11th, and the focus is business finances. So we hope you can join us for that. It will be offered virtually as well as in person again. The East Central Regional, this series of workshops is being put on collaboratively, and the East Central Regional Development Commission initiates business and infrastructure projects that create growth opportunities for East Central Minnesota to help our region thrive and prosper. The SBDC provides professional business consulting to businesses operating throughout the state of Minnesota at no cost to the business owner. And the Women's Business Alliance provides women business owners with services to grow, finance, or start a business. Resources and programs are tailored specifically to the needs and growth of women entrepreneurs. So we thank them all for their cooperation and collaboration on this project. We are recording this session, so it will be shared on our website after the event. Our June event took about a week to get it up on our website at ecrdc.org, so please feel free to check back or share that recording. All participants have been muted. If you have a question, please ask them in the Q&A or raise your hand with the little tool at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and we'll be sure to get to you. And the chat function is also enabled, so feel free to use either one of those. This is going to be a very interesting topic. I know it's on the top of mind for a lot of local business owners and probably those across the country. Our presenters today are Luke, Della, and Rebecca. Luke Grenier is the Department of Employment and Economic Development's Regional Analyst for Central and Southwestern Minnesota. Luke conducts research, writes publications, and provides presentations about Greater Minnesota's economy, job market, industry trends, career and educational decision-making, and higher education outcomes. He has a bachelor's degree in management from Park University in Parkville, Missouri, and currently serves on the National ACT Steering Committee and Minnesota State ACT Council. Della Ludwig is a workforce strategy consultant with the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development for the 13-county region of central Minnesota. She has extensive human resources, benefits, and recruiting experience in several industries, including healthcare and manufacturing. In her current role with DEED, she connects key stakeholders to workforce resources and supports businesses in developing strategic workforce solutions to drive economic equity and growth. Rebecca Perotti is a business service coordinator with Central Minnesota Jobs and Training Services for Minnesota's Region 7E. During her 21 years with CMJTS, Rebecca has helped to meet career development and job placement needs and has developed expertise in creating innovative programs to elevate opportunities for job seekers and businesses. She plays a key role in developing and maintaining partnerships, writing grant proposals, securing funding, and facilitating special projects. Since 2009, Rebecca has specialized in meeting business needs for talent and training and enjoys consulting one-on-one with businesses to learn and consider strategies that help them reach their goals. We thank you all for joining us and sharing your wisdom this morning. We're going to start with Luke. He's going to go over some labor market statistics. So thank you, Luke. Luke, you're on. Yep, there you go.
Thanks, Michelle. Good morning, everyone. Like Michelle mentioned, I'm Luke Greiner. I'm a regional analyst for the labor market information at DEED. So my office uses the economic data for the state of Minnesota. We operate as agents of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which is tasked with creating everything from the employment rate, wage data, figuring out people work, who people work for, and economic data about our state comes out of my office. So we're also the ones that create the monthly employment analysis that kind of, it's the jobs report or the jobs update. If you're familiar with that, that's usually one of the more reported data sets along with the unemployment rate. So
Luke,
thank you for having me this morning. I'm going to give a Region 7E. So
Luke, this is Della.
Yeah.
We're getting a lot of feedback. I don't know if it's your connection or your headset.
Let me try to rejoin, maybe by phone.
It sounds better, Luke.
It sounds better now.
Mm-hmm.
Sound better now.
Oh.
Not sure. So anyways, I cover central and southwest Minnesota, and just shoot me a message if you can't hear me again, and I'll try to sign off and come back on. But so I'm going to be going over some information about Region 7E, which is what we call it in the biz. That'd be Pine, Chisago, Mille Lacs, and Isanti in Kanabec County, and be covering some highlights on that region. So our most recent employment data that we have is from the fourth quarter of me, but it's a pretty good changed in the region compared to the fourth quarter of 2019. And so regional employers, this would be, covered employment. Roughly 95, 96% of jobs are covered by unemployment insurance. And we use that program as kind of the basis for looking at jobs in the region. And it just in 7E, we had almost 2,900 fewer jobs than we had previously. Let me see if I can, I'm just going to hop off and rejoin and call in, if that's all right.
Yep, Luke, I'll distract them while you're
okay. Thanks, Della.
How about that? I can do some juggling. So again, we're focusing on the counties of Pine, Isanti, Chisago, Kanabec, and Mille Lacs. So the information that we're going to be going through is going to be very specific to that. Usually we trail just a little bit in the information. That's why you're seeing it 2019 to 2020. Also, we wanted to compare what was happening through COVID and how we came through that. So you can see some of the information on the screen at this point, and what the region has dealt with in the last year. So you can see that there's 92 fewer business establishments compared to the year prior. And all but 4 of the major industry sectors lost jobs in 2020. So accommodation and food service had 24% less jobs. I think that's going to be a continual thing just because there's not as many jobs seekers, especially in this region. It's a little more tight. So we can go to the next screen. Thank you. Oh, that's a good one. That one Luke is going to have to talk about. So what I'm going to do is just talk a little bit more about some of the other information that we have. And basically, 60% of the residents in your region actually leave the region to work elsewhere. So they're living and so they have a home and they're living in your region, but they'll drive elsewhere, which we believe is obviously towards the metro area for higher wages or better job opportunities that they feel are available to them. So it's definitely something that you need to keep in mind when you are recruiting, is that a lot of those people or residents in your area are leaving and going elsewhere. And so it does need to be a little more competitive for you. The other thing I wanted to bring up in this region, it's 94% white population. So there's not a lot of diversity at this time in your region. And that's something that the state as in its entirety, oh, here he is. I'll finish that up. So you can go right ahead, Luke.
Della,
Luke, are you
I think
back?
we might, Della, this is Rebecca. We might need to allow Luke to speak. What is, okay, he wrote it down, 850. One moment, please.
Sure. So 94% are white. And so obviously the state is as a total or as a whole has been changing quite a bit. So it's gonna eventually move further and further out from the metro area. So you should be seeing that within the next, I would say 15 to 20 years, more diverse populations. Median household. Oh, Luke, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, it's all you.
All right. I think it'd be easier to go to space than to get me to talk in some of these presentations. This is just no. Anyways, all right, let's see. I'm not sure if I can control the screen anymore. Anyways, I'll just pick up here. I don't think I can advance anymore for some reason, but
Luke, this
these
is
are
Rebecca.
basically-
I will advance it for you.
Okay, thanks. Geez, phone a friend. Thank you. All right, so this chart right here is basically showing you, kind of where your region is sitting most recently, looking at, again, that fourth quarter change from 2019, just before the pandemic and all that mess, up to the last fourth quarter. So in our region, we actually had some gains in a few industry sectors that we didn't see statewide. So statewide, we only saw just a minor uptick in employment in the agriculture industry. But in Region 7E, we actually saw a decent amount of growth in the admin support and waste management industry sector. That would include things like temp help and staffing agencies fall into there. So that's really where that growth is coming from. It's not waste management. And why they're grouped up together, you'd have to ask the federal government's BLS. They just had to stick them somewhere, so they stuck those two together. But anyways, job growth there is mainly in that temp help and staffing sector. Transportation and warehousing also saw almost 120 job growth, and so did professional and scientific and technical services, saw growth of almost 70 jobs, and then construction is up. So those would be kind of like the highlights. A little bit of growth in management and companies and enterprises, basically nil. But the big talking point there would be the accommodation and food services all the way to the left, accounting for well over half of all job loss in the region. Certainly the industry that struggled the most, not only had the largest layoffs, but then also struggling to gain those employees back. Two big reasons why they're struggling still is because A, they laid off the most amount of people, so they have the most amount of people to try to hire in an incredibly tight labor market now. And also jobs in that sector tend to be relatively low paying. So as the labor market tightens up, there's more options. And while not everybody that holds those jobs can, go on and become a CNC machinist or something like that, it's definitely a struggle for that sector to try to retain employees when they might have options and other companies might be willing to train them. If you move on to the next slide, this will show you just I would say a snapshot of your economy. So how does the previous chart relate to what you have going on in your region? This is probably the best way I can show you simply what your economy looks like. So the blue bars here and those numbers at the base of the blue bars represent employment. So your largest industry is at the top here. It's healthcare and social assistance. Okay, Rebecca said I might be able to click through. There's 9,400 jobs in the healthcare and social assistance industry in this area. Your area is really disproportionately heavy in healthcare. So in most regions of the state, either healthcare or manufacturing is the largest industry sector. In a lot of areas, they're very, very close in employment. Typically, retail trade falls to number 2 or 3 down the list, but your region is definitely different. Just highly concentrated in healthcare and social assistance. You can also see the average annual wages that each industry pays in your area by the green dots there. So the highest paying sector is utilities, which is typical across the state. Average wages there are $96,000 a year. And again, they're really high because they don't have very many low paying jobs, unlike healthcare, which actually has a significant amount of relatively low paying jobs. A lot of the labor in that sector is not practitioners in technical occupations, it's healthcare support occupations. All right, hey, look at that. I'm able to advance the slides, I think, unless someone's just helping me. But I also wanted to talk and touch on the unemployment insurance statistics. So unemployment insurance is different than, like the unemployment rate, for instance, but it's a pretty good indicator of what we actually have going on in our area as far as disruption. And I'm talking about disruptions on the workforce side. So this chart right here at the very far left, it's kind of cut off on my screen. I'm not sure if it is on yours, but the left would be May 2019 unemployment insurance claims. The middle with 14,280, that's last May 2020 unemployment insurance claims that are paid out in your 5-county area. And then the 6,224, that's how many unemployment insurance claims were paid out in just a few months ago, this last May. So we have a pretty good drop in unemployment insurance claims being paid out. That's great news. That's what we want to see, is this number dropping, but you can see we're almost 7 times higher than what we were prior to the pandemic for May. So it's still a significant amount of people receiving unemployment insurance. Not all of those people receiving unemployment insurance are out of a job. A large portion of them are still working. They could be being paid out from a second job or from a reduction in hours. So there's a few different scenarios where you will qualify for unemployment insurance, aside from a total job loss. And this also includes folks that are self-employed. There's just a big expansion in who qualifies for unemployment insurance. It also, with our extension till September 6th, I believe, the typical 26 weeks has been extended to no cutoff in unemployment insurance until the September 6th date as of right now. So just a lot more people are eligible for UI than what's typical. The biggest decline over the last year was actually in the building and groundskeeping, and that falls right in line with more of the business as usual in normal operations. A lot of those workers were laid off last year, called back as operations resume at physical locations. Farming, fishing, and forestry also down significantly compared to last May. Some demographics of the people that are receiving UI, a little over half are men, and this is a flip-flop compared to last year. So last year is only 43%, so less than, way less than half of the claims being paid out were to men, and that was largely due to a huge jump in claims from women out of the healthcare fields and also education, which are 2 sectors dominated by women. So as we saw those sectors get back to work, men are representing a higher share than what we saw last year, but actually a significantly lower share than what we typically see. So typically they represent 67 as of last May in 2019, they were up 67% of claims. So women still being disproportionately impacted, even though they are filing a smaller share than men overall anyways. And benefits, just for a refresher, if you're not familiar, typically UI is 50% of your average weekly wages up to a cap of $762 a week. Last year, we saw a $600 bonus on top of that. Right now, it's the $300 expanded UI payments, so that amounts to about $1,000 a week, or over a year's period, that's a $55,224. And that is basically the top end of what people could be receiving that are on unemployment insurance if they make over that threshold, where 50% of their average weekly wages is $762. All right, and what does that really mean in the area in terms of, is that enough? Is that not enough? What type of an impact might that have? This chart right here, there's two tables. The top is the cost of living for single workers in your region. And I have that broken down by each county, because each county is just a little bit different. But that is what it would cost for a single person to live with no children. That second column there next to the counties, that's the ages. So you can see it's just a little bit different for workers that are over 51 years or over 50 years of age. Biggest costs there being housing, transportation. But in order to make a living in your area, they need to earn, anywhere from about $15 in Mille Lacs County, up to about a little over $18 an hour in Isanti County, which is, between $30,000 and $38,000 a year. Now, if you go to the bottom table there, that chart shows you what a typical family cost would be, which would be two workers, one child, one worker working full-time, one worker working part-time, watching the child part-time, so they have part-time childcare and so on. But that family would need to basically earn, between $50,000 and $67,000 a year to cover their basic needs. This doesn't include any retirement savings. It doesn't include entertainment. It doesn't include any extras. This is basic needs, health and safe lifestyle, as we term it, just basic needs. And these are the type of occupations that were most recently paid out for, the types of workers receiving them. So when you file for unemployment insurance, if you're the applicant, you indicate what your occupation was. And so we can take that data and try to understand who's out of work. Who's receiving unemployment insurance is what you see on your screen here. So the construction workers are responsible for the largest share of filings. About 1,300 UI claims were paid out in May this year to construction workers. They do represent a large share in a typical May anyways. So I've been telling people to basically discount what you see in construction UI claims for anywhere from the fourth through the first and second quarter, because weather plays a role in that. But where else do we have people that were still being paid unemployment insurance as of May? You can see food prep and serving. A lot of people still receiving UI for that. A lot of those claims are being paid to people that are working part-time involuntarily. As it's almost a chicken and egg situation, as workers might want to come back to work full-time. Employers might want them to work full-time, but if you can't get staffing levels up to a full-time level, you're forced to operate with limited hours, and the workers you do have then might not be able to have full-time employment. So it kind of self-feeds this problem of gaining jobs back in those occupations too. An opening is not a job, and to actually have a job afforded there and not a job loss, you have to have somebody to fill it. That's kind of been a struggle in that sector, but also sales and related, a lot of claims from that, and office administrative support. So if you're thinking to yourself, like, who are these people that are unemployed? What type of skill sets do they have? This is probably the best snapshot I can give you. Most recently, as of this May, these are the types of workers that are not working full-time or they're out of work. Next slide just kind of shows how that compares to a typical year. Or I shouldn't say typical year, how it's compared to 2020, which is anything but typical. You can see that orange bar there is 2020 claims, the blue bars there is 2021. So huge improvements in the food prep and serving related, but still substantial. And for context, we typically have almost no unemployment insurance claims paid out to food prep and serving related workers. Because those occupations, I mean, they typically have a ton of turnover, but rarely are they terminated in a manner that would qualify for those workers for unemployment insurance, which typically you have to be, you have to have a job loss or reduction in hours through no fault of your own. Okay, so we typically see basically nobody qualifying for unemployment insurance out of that category. And you see at the top, unknown, really large, again, because this is self-reported. If people take a look at this list and they don't know where they fit in, unknown is what they're going to select. I also want to show you kind of demonstrate another segment of our economy that's really important. It's our labor force participation rate. And how do we stack up against other states? So the labor force participation rate for Minnesota is 67.9%. You can see that in the dark green, actually quite high still, but we typically have the second or third highest participation rate in the country. We have for the better part of a decade. And every state's seeing their participation rate fall from the pandemic. This percentage represents the share of the population that's 16 years of age or older that are either employed or looking for employment, actively seeking employment. And naturally, we saw this drop. Think about last May when people were, maybe they were let go, but really encouraged not to be out and about. We weren't really encouraging people to look for work because we didn't want people going to work. So a really strange period last year, and it shifted all these down. We saw dramatic declines in our participation rates, and they really haven't rebounded. This is naturally going to decline as a larger share of our population ages into retirement, post-working. So that will impact your participation rate, but so will people that just leave the labor market because maybe they don't want to work. Maybe they're scared of COVID. Maybe they want to be a stay-at-home mom or dad. Maybe they just, some sort of circumstance is preventing them from working and they're not looking for work anymore. Maybe they're just highly discouraged. So we rank basically in the middle of our neighboring states. You can see Iowa, Wisconsin, they're below us by a bit, and the Dakotas a bit higher. And the reason that this is really, really important to businesses is because that is a reflection of our labor utilization. And the higher that rate is, the more workers we have. So increasing that through any means possible is going to be beneficial to employers. And this, I pulled, this is from basically the current population survey, which we help administer for the BLS, but it's widely reported on. And it kind of shows you some of the decline here for women, men, and both women and men. And you can see pretty sharp declines, from February of 2020 to February 2021 in the participation rate. And that's kind of concerning. We should be seeing that grow. It's higher than it was at the low point, which was basically last spring. But hopefully, the goal or the hope is that with more people feeling comfortable with COVID and vaccinations and just working in general in the current situation, hopefully we'll claw back some of these losses that we've had. And the big headline that you typically hear is, massive declines from women. That's actually not necessarily true. Women have a lower participation rate than men. They typically always have. What we see is basically, a similar decline for both women and men. Just that it's lower for women. So I think the media tends to focus on that. This table is just a pile of numbers. and these slides will be shared. If you don't already have them, you will. But there's a lot to unpackage here. So I tried to highlight some things that I think will stand out. I'll just walk you through this real quick. But these are basically the best demographics we can break down for labor in your area. So Region 70, the 5 counties, is home to roughly 86,000 workers. You can see that second or third column there is the participation rate. Your area historically has had a lower participation rate than the state. In most rural areas, we see that a little bit above or at least matching, in some areas significantly higher than the state overall. But definitely a struggle in 7E. So some of that, a lot of that in your area is just due to an older demographic. The more of your population is at, retirement and above age, the lower your participation rate is going to be naturally, as you have a significantly higher share of people that are retired. Not necessarily a bad thing, but it does throw off your participation rate. Have more of those folks. You can see though, it's not only just, you can't just blame it on having a larger share of retirees. You actually have lower participation rates for people in their prime working years, even above. The 75 and older, they have a really high unemployment rate. I would ignore that just because it's a small sample there. That could be an anomaly. I find that hard to believe that 14% of 75-year-olds and above are unemployed. That's typically like 1 or 2%. But you can see also, pretty high unemployment rates for those participation, for those groups that have low participation rates too. And they typically go hand in hand. If the people you hang out with and that are like you or maybe the same age, if they're more likely to be unemployed, you might look at your economic surroundings and say, well, I can't get a job anyways because Jim and Susie, they can't get a job, so why would I? So then you just stop looking and don't look for work, and then you're not in the labor force. It doesn't matter what age you are. You can see we have the employment characteristics by race. The vast majority of workers in your region are white. Basically, the only significant subpopulation there are Hispanic, Latinos, and people of 2 or more races, which we don't know what 2 races they are. But everything else there you can see is so small that the data is, I would say, highly unreliable. For instance, you can see Black or African Americans, there's an estimated 355 workers in your region with an unemployment rate of negative 17.7%. Obviously, they don't have a negative unemployment rate. That's impossible. It's just showing you, that's how bad the margins are on that. Basically, you may or may not have a handful of Black people in your region, but these data are not reliable enough to say how many we have, what their participation rate is, or what the unemployment rate is. Basically have no idea. Other than that, if you skip down to the bottom there, folks with less than a high school diploma, again, that's a substantial population, a reflection of older populations in your area, because it wasn't always typical to get a high school diploma. And a lot of the folks at the very old end of our age pyramid don't have a high school diploma just because it wasn't as common or as necessary as it is today. But they have a pretty low participation rate, also a pretty high unemployment rate, kind of underscoring why a high school diploma is so important. And then if you go to the right, we can see some of these age breakdown of where we're kind of lagging in our area. Particularly men in their prime working years in our area here have some pretty low participation rates compared to what we would typically see, and also some pretty high rates of unemployment. So these are all areas of opportunity. That is why I'm putting this up here, is because these are underutilized segments of our labor force. And you not only have some areas that are maybe underutilized, but then you also have a significant share of your workers, about 60%, that live in your 5-county area that work outside of it. So they could work just outside, like just over the border, or they could be driving all the way to Minneapolis. Longer than my time to kind of explain where they're going here, but a lot of out commuters, and you've known that for years. A significant portion of your workers live in your bedroom communities because it's a great place to live, and then drive to the Twin Cities to get higher wages in a more competitive labor market. These are just unemployment rates. I apologize. I want to have this one slide above, but it ended up here. And you can see that the unemployment rate for men and women, you know, is significantly higher. A little bit different there for men and women. Women actually have a slightly lower unemployment rate. But again, you have to be looking for work to be counted as unemployed, kind of the big takeaway there. If you stop looking because you're caring for a child or an aging adult, you're not unemployed. You're not even in the labor force. And the last slide here is the job openings. And I apologize, I have Minnesota on here. My slide will be updated to have central Minnesota. It's similar in nature. The most openings that we have in your region in central Minnesota is in the sales and related occupations. So that rebounded much faster than food prep and serving occupations. But in your region, even though healthcare is your largest industry sector by far, you actually have relatively few healthcare type openings. So in central Minnesota, the largest is sales and related. The second largest segment with openings is food prep and serving, and then third is transportation and warehousing. And we have just a huge amount of openings. So this means employers are screaming for workers. You all know that as employers. For context, we have the second highest fourth quarter job openings on record, and we have data going back to 2001 for this area. And so we have a huge amount of demand on the employer side, but we have fewer workers, and a lot has changed. So workers and employers relationship has changed a lot. We not only have a shift in unemployment insurance, so this more generous benefit plus a longer period of being able to receive UI means that workers have more time to consider different types of employment options. There's still, you know, the pandemic going on, so some folks that maybe are at high risk could be still scared to go back to work. We have this entire telework dynamic, you know, where roughly half of our workers are still working from home, which should be a boon to your area for any people that can work from home. Maybe they don't need to drive to the Twin Cities and they can spend their money grocery shopping and such like that in your region. Obviously be the goal of a lot of EDAs in your area. Childcare was an issue coming into the pandemic, certainly hasn't helped because we saw major fluctuations, which is a big risk in the childcare industry anyways. We saw enrollments nosedive at the beginning of last year as people were pulling their kids out and things like that. And how do you keep those organizations afloat that offer childcare when their revenue source is cut and then demand is spiked again? It's stabilization in that sector would be really, really helpful. And then obviously transportation was just totally tipped upside down. And there's still, a significant amount of people that rely on transportation for work. So similar amount of demand as prior to the pandemic, but a whole different bag of bolts to try to screw around with this and try to figure out how do we get these people back to work? How do we help the folks that maybe are missing out on what I would consider an amazing labor market for workers? It might not always be that case. All right, so that is the end of my segment. I got screwed up on time. I'm not even sure how long I've been going here, but I don't know. Do I have questions or should I just yield to the next presenter?
We have time for questions.
Yeah, we have time for questions. If anyone wants to raise their hand or put it in the Q&A, please feel free.
Sure, I see one from Deanna. She asked how education fits into workers going back for new opportunities. So that certainly is a possibility. And I believe you're talking about maybe like a fast food worker gaining some higher education or maybe on-the-job training, an apprenticeship or something like that, and then getting into a higher skill, higher wage job. We really haven't seen a lot of that. We've seen enrollments decline at most of our higher education institutions. So while it'd be a great opportunity to do that, I would say it's not maybe. So for some working in the restaurant biz, they love it. It fits their lifestyle. It's perfect because it offers the flexibility, the scheduling, the nature of the work, all that is a good fit. For others, maybe not so much. And for those that it maybe isn't even a good fit for, it's still very difficult to shift and change. I don't think we know exactly how many people are going to make that change. Not yet, but hopefully people where they're not a good fit in, say, the restaurant or accommodation industry, hopefully they can find their way into something that makes them feel more productive, happier, and they can be a better benefit to a different employer. But we really don't know yet. We haven't seen a spike in higher education enrollments, so that leads me to believe that it's not happening yet. Any other questions?
I don't see any other hands raised or questions being posed, so thank you, Luke. We really appreciate all the great information. It's always fascinating. It puts a really clear picture on areas that we can look at.
Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the invitation.
If you have further questions for Luke or want to, direct them to us, all of the contact information is in the slide deck as well, so you'll have an opportunity to do that. And now we're going to turn the presentation over to Della Ludwig. She's going to talk about barriers to employment, how company culture can assist or maybe not assist your retaining and attraction of potential employees. So thank you,
Thanks,
Della.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Just want to make sure everybody can see me okay, hear me okay. If you have any concerns, definitely put them in chat box. I guess one of the things I just want to talk about, like what surprised you most about that labor market data? Putting your chat box, we're going to be using chat box quite a bit during this presentation, just getting you guys comfortable with that, just getting some dialogue going between you. So any surprises out there that you guys were like, wow, I didn't know that, or I didn't realize that? A lot of people always seem to be a little more surprised when they find out exactly how many people live in their community, but actually commute elsewhere. Median wages is another one too, that people are usually pretty surprised about. Any feedback on that at all? If not, we'll keep moving. So next slide. All right, thank you. So like Michelle said, our presentation today is Finders Keepers, what you can do to find and keep employees. So we're going to be covering quite a few different topics through this presentation. I'm Della. I actually work for the Department of Employment Economic Development, and Rebecca, she works for CMJTS. So we both fall underneath the Department of Career Force. It is a business-led network of private, public, and nonprofit partners throughout Minnesota. And we're committed to helping Career Force and any of the job seekers out there. So Career Force centers or Career Force locations used to be called workforce centers. So that changed the last few years. And Deeds Job Services now falls underneath that branch, as well as CMJTS, which is part of the Minnesota Association for Workforce Boards, or MOB, as we call them. Going on to the next slide. So again, I'm Della. I'm a workforce strategy consultant. You can see here the map of Minnesota and how that is divided out and what area or region I cover. I'm that green area. And you can see all of the different categories and other team members. We also just hired a new person down in the southeast corner. So if you have any businesses down there, definitely feel free to reach out. And this is one of the resource guides that we provided to the ECRDC that they'll be sharing with you after as well. Next slide. So today's agenda, we're going to be focusing on barriers to employment, company culture. We're going to talk about how to recruit, train, and retain. And then Rebecca's going to talk about the untapped or hidden talent pools and how to think outside the box. We'll also give you quite a few resources for you to go through. And obviously, if you have any questions or concerns after, you can reach out to us. Our goal today is to assist you with the information and how to reach out to these pockets of job seekers that may have higher levels of unemployment and offer recruitment and retention tools to create an inclusive workforce, no matter what size of company that you are. And the next slide. Just a quick summary, some of the information that Luke already went through. Again, 94% of the population is white. Like he said, Minnesota's in the top 5 states for lowest unemployment rate. We're also the top 5 highest for labor force participation in the nation. So even though it seems doom and gloom right now, we are doing very well. And we are in the top 5 in both of those. Next slide. So understanding barriers to employment. People with barriers to employment have some sort of life circumstance. Here are the most common items that we hear from people that are struggling to either be employed or keeping a job or even looking for a position. So they feel like they're underemployed or they don't have any experience. Their housing availability isn't allowing them to live in that community or start at a certain position. Employment for a spouse and dependents may make their schedule a little different. Transportation and lack of a driver's license obviously plays into it, especially in your region. Daycare or lack thereof. Sometimes it can even just be the cost. High school diploma or GED. A lot of positions now have taken that off of the minimum requirements, just because is it truly necessary to work at McDonald's, for example? Mental health and addiction, criminal history, English as a second language, domestic violence, or dealing with some type of circumstance at home. Welfare cliff. The welfare cliff basically means when a person is on welfare and they start a position, they have to stay under a certain amount of income or they would lose all of their benefits. And sometimes that includes their healthcare, daycare, those type of benefits that when they tally that all up, it doesn't pay for them to be in a position or in a job. So they will sit and calculate that out, and we need to be aware of that. And then just diversity, equity, and inclusion. You're going to be hearing a lot more about that, obviously, in the next few years as the state of Minnesota continues to change. Next slide. So here are a few examples of disparities that you experience by some in the society. And basically what this is showing is how they are interlinked. So it's not just I can't find a job, it's because I can't afford housing in that market, or I don't have the right education for that position, or I don't have really good health and I need a more flexible schedule. Everything is interlinked, and that's something to keep in mind when you are hiring, and the flexibility that it sometimes is needed to help with those employees. Next slide. So company culture is where I'm going to really focus on, and I know a lot of you are a lot smaller of companies, but just wanted to really touch on this because this plays a significant role in recruitment. So company culture can be defined as a set of shared values, goals, attitudes, and practices that characterize an organization. It's the way people feel about the work they do and the values they believe in and where they see the company going and what they're doing to get it there. So one of the first things businesses need to do is really evaluate their culture. Looking at your mission, vision, and values, and making sure that the public is aware of your culture and your values. You should also make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are part of that mission and vision values. And remember that culture is your brand. It's what you're selling to the employees and to your community. Some of the things that we hear a lot with the retention is about your culture and opportunity. So a lot of times people will leave or they'll stay because of that culture. And do you know why the employees are staying and what leads them to leave? So making sure that you're having those conversations with your employees. A lot of times benefits such as health insurance and time off play a reason in why they're staying. And then obviously flexibility, especially if they have family commitments. Next slide. So the Star Tribune does, oh, did I skip one? There we go. So Star Tribune does an annual survey, and they then rate the top highest businesses, and they'll do it based on the size of the company and entry-level companies, small businesses, as well as large businesses. So what they do is they, if you're interested in doing this, they would send your employees a survey and they would complete this information. The reason I bring it up is it's a really good way for you without even being involved in the survey if you did not want to do it. Just having these questions available for your internal employees and having those conversations with them. So aligning or the alignment, where's the company headed? What are its values? And is there cooperation at all levels? The effectiveness, are we getting things done? Do we listen to different viewpoints and do we encourage new ideas? Connection, do employees feel appreciated? Is their work meaningful? And do employees and departments work together toward a common goal? And do you have fun? Managers, do managers care about their team and their employees and their concerns? And do they help them learn and grow? And are they approachable? Employee engagement, is there loyalty? What motivates them? And do employees refer others to the company? And leadership, is there confidence in the company's leadership? And do employees trust the leaders? And just the basics, how is the pay, benefits, and flexibility? You can see that's on the lowest or at the end of the survey. And it's given the lowest rankings when we're looking at why people stay at a company. So again, these are great questions to ask yourself and your employees, especially during their reviews, or even if you have the opportunity to do an internal employee survey. Next. There we go. So culture starts from the top all the way down. Everyone needs to have a clear vision of who you are as well as where you're going. Management needs to be approachable and caring. Your culture should always be the same, whether you're working with a client externally, interviewing a job seeker, or talking with an employee internally. You cannot over communicate your vision or your culture to the staff or your community, especially when you're trying to market for new hires. Next. So building that talent pipeline. So I'm sure most of you don't have an HR department and you're already wearing 20 different hats. But we wanted to make sure that we kind of went through some of the different things that you should be doing when you are building a talent pipeline. When you're attracting that talent, Educate the prospective talent about the real reasons to come and work for you. Never miss the opportunity to show why employees should stay. Don't run the same normal ad that you see everybody else doing. Really make sure that you're telling people in your, whether you're doing it on paper or you're doing it in radio, make sure that you really look at different perspectives and have even employees do your ads and give their perspective when you're recruiting. Manage the talent, foster and maintain a line of communication between the communities, employees and prospective talents. And place talent, know your employees and place them in positions where they'll be successful. Making sure not just because that the person who's been there the longest is the supervisor or the trainer, sometimes just making sure that you know the skill sets of your employees can make a huge difference. And enrich the talent, provide opportunities for talent to grow, advance, and change. Make sure you ask them what else they want to learn, or cross-train your employees to give them those opportunities. And then retaining the talent, creating that environment in which talent thrives and where contributions and reciprocity is everywhere. Next on attract talent. So your number one resource in attracting and recruiting is your current workers and their families and their friends, including your own family and friends. You need to make sure that you network, and you need to know the community, and they need to know who you are as well. You need to make sure that you're giving back to the community and reaching out to those in leadership roles within the community. You need to have a strong relationship with the schools in your area, and you need to offer tours to youth and their parents. This gives them a great opportunity to see what's in that building and to learn more about the opportunities available within your organization. The best way to attract talent is to grow that career pathway. And a lot of times that's through the youth. Employees are moving target, so you need to always be looking down different paths. Don't always have the same ad or the same or putting that ad in the same place. Make sure that you're constantly changing how and where you're recruiting. And then make sure that you're reaching out to CMJTS or your career force locations in your neighborhoods. Create a referral program so that employees who do recruit go ahead and actually get some sort of bonus. I've heard a lot of businesses now that they'll have a table of different types of items that they can win. And every time that they turn in a new name or a person that is potentially interested in being hired, they get their name in the drawing, and then they can win different types of items. So just thinking outside the box and looking at different ways to recruit. And offer apprenticeships. Give people the opportunity, especially youth in the summer, give them the opportunity to learn about the position and take them under your wing. There's also different types of programs available: adult basic education, English language learners, or GED. And Rebecca will talk a little bit more about those programs later on in the presentation. So next on manage talent. So you have two types of customers, internal and external. Okay? You can't have one without the other. So why do we end up treating them differently? So this was a quote that we actually took from one of the employers who attended one of our events. They actually make sure that they interview every single person, and they interview them at like a marketing event. They know that if they leave a good impression with that person, even if they're not hired, they think that your company is a great place and they want to work for you, and they're going to talk positively within the community that they're in. Okay. So placing talent. So how easy is it to apply at your company? And how do people do that? People are willing to learn. So make sure you give them the benefit of the doubt and you hire for the person, not always just the skills. Take away every hurdle for anybody that is applying, even making it mobile friendly or them being able to pull up your website on their phone makes a huge difference. What do potential candidates experience when they walk in the door? What is the interview process and how quickly do you hire? These are huge missing links at certain times. If a person walks in and is ignored, not greeted, looked down upon, that leaves that everlasting experience. We actually made, when I was in HR, had the secretary be part of the interviewing process. And she was also judging and helping with the experience on how that person came into the building, how they were greeted, if they felt that secretary or receptionist was part of the team, and learned their customer service skills right away as well.
Della, we had a question from Marie. She
Sure.
writes, as a business owner, if we would like to try to hire from overseas for remote work, how do we get started doing so? Do you have any resources on knowing how to get that system?
Yeah, it
started?
depends on who or what country. Did they say which country that they were looking at?
She indicated the UK or Canada, Australia. They're all different, I suppose.
So each country has their own regulations. And then the US has their regulations on who could be allowed in. So for example, in the summer times, you'll see a lot because of, like Luke said, there's a lot of openings in the restaurants and at the different types of cabins and resorts in Minnesota. So they'll run a summer program where it's a limited amount of time that they're allowed to be here. And we can definitely get that information to them. That's not part of today's presentation, but we definitely, if they send me an email, I can help them with that. And then there's different types of green cards or authorization for them to work here. It does depend on the type of position that they're trying to hire for. Some companies have really looked at like Puerto Rico or some of the other US territories to see if they can recruit from there, because there's less red tape with that, because they're already part of the United States. So it makes it a little easier. But a lot of times it's both governments that control that, and that person has to have their own personal paperwork in line for that to happen. Any other questions? Did that answer make sense?
Yep, it did. And I don't have any other questions as of right now.
Okay, great. So in the chat box, how would you guys describe your company culture? And you can use like 1 or 2 words or a sentence. What's your elevator speech when somebody asks you about your company and what you do? And how do you sell yourself? So if you want to take a minute and just put some words or a description of your company in the chat box. Michelle, I don't know if you want to share anything that's shared out there.
Sure. People wrote collaborative, flexible, employee-owned, friendly and helpful to the public. They have an open door.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
Employee-owned is huge right now, especially as a recruiting tool. This generation wants to know that they're vested and that they have the opportunity to grow within it. And employee owned or ESOP companies really have a benefit above other companies.
Is that a hard thing to set up? If you're not,
Yeah, it's again, probably more of a tax question that we could definitely help if that's what they're interested in doing. It's just a different way of, instead of doing a 401k match, all employees then get a certain percentage based off of how successful the company is. But again, that's definitely a great opportunity if you're interested in recruiting and retaining employees. Shields company in St. Cloud, for example, when it started, and they still are an ESOP, some of their janitors have now retired as millionaires because that company has become so successful. So
that's exciting to know.
yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it gives everybody the same opportunity.
Someone else wrote transparent leadership. And
Absolutely.
I think that's a really key one also.
Right. Yep, that transparency and that communication and being available. Somebody had said open door, staying on their level and being able to carry those conversations with the employee is huge. Knowing things about the employee, whether it's their birthday or their work anniversary or even their kids' names. When I worked for Burst Travel, there was 10 different locations, and the owner, before he would walk into our place, he had notes on every single one of us, and he'd come in and know details about us that I hadn't told him in 6 months. And, I didn't know he had a notebook until many years later, but it definitely made a person feel good, when he'd walk in and know my child's name and where I had traveled last, and just knowing those smaller details.
Makes a big impact. Someone
Huge.
else wrote, being a governmental organization, we're lucky to be able to offer great benefits. However, we really pride ourselves on the amazing and flexible IT department. It says a huge impact on employees' lives, especially in the pandemic work from home age. Additionally, our commissioners and administration have a very open and forward way about them. Employee ideas and goals are encouraged and supported. That's awesome.
That's great.
Mhm.
That's great. And a lot of companies will give bonuses based off of ideas, and they'll do quarterly reviews of those and offer lunches and go through those new reviews or new ideas. And if they're implemented, that person gets a bonus too, whether it's saving the company time or money. So there's lots of ways to encourage that communication with your employees.
It really makes you feel part of the company.
Absolutely. Great questions, great interaction. Love it. So the next, we can go on to the next one then, Rebecca. So enriching talent. So how do you enrich your talent? How do you train your employees? Sometimes employees move directly up throughout the company. Sometimes just because you're a great football player doesn't mean you're a great coach. So really understanding the skills that your employees have and making sure they're in the right position within your company. Giving them the opportunities to do extra training, certifications. It gives them the opportunity to increase their skills and their pay, as well as giving you more flexibility as an owner. So making sure that you understand who your best trainers and coaches are within your company. Again, it's not always the person with the most experience. Making sure that you offer them training rather than just internal, looking at different opportunities that are available. We did list a few of the grants, a few of the grants that are available. And if you wanted more information on those, you could definitely reach out to us. These are great opportunities for employers to do some training, working with either internally with their own business, or if you wanted to bring in a college or get certification, we could assist with that. So definitely letting us know and we can help you through that. Retaining talent, state interviews versus reviews, making sure that when you are doing the reviews, especially if they're just once a year, really giving the employee the opportunity to be heard, and having that small talk and that conversation with them, and really hearing them through and finding out if they do have questions or concerns can mean a lot to a person. We always say that you should do some sort of survey, confidential survey every couple years. Sometimes people don't want to say things directly to you. So giving them still the opportunity to make sure that you're aware of certain situations. And when people leave your company, find out why. Sometimes they won't tell you exactly, but if you give them the opportunity, at least then you tried everything. Making sure you're watching your employee retention rate. How many people are leaving? How many people do you have to hire, especially now when there isn't a lot of people? Making sure that you can retain as many of them as possible. And learning what your cost of turnover is. How long does it take to hire? How many ads are you running? How much time is used to actually train that person? That makes a huge difference when you are hiring, and making sure that you're hiring the right person. And then what positions have the most turnover and why? Does it have something to do with the training? Is it the supervisor? Is it just a really tough, hard position? And is there a way to divide that position between others? Really digging into why there is certain situations with turnover. Next. So again, you just want to make sure that you are reviewing your company's culture and you're building that talent pipeline, making sure that you're attracting, managing, and placing talent, and then enriching and retaining them. My son, when I was in HR, used to say that my job was to hire and fire. It's no longer like that. There's tons of other things. It's much more of much more of a science than it was 20 or 30 years ago. Next slide is the 4-step process for inclusion in the workplace. Some ways that you can really make sure that people feel included in decisions and within the workplace. So really listening to them and being aware of whether it's diversity or even just concerns that they have internally. And then identifying how or what is your current diversity, and how do you plan on changing some of the inclusivity? And a lot of times people believe that diversity is just the color of a person's skin. Diversity can be, say, for example, manufacturing right now is about 70% white male. All right. So how do you diversify that? How do you get more women interested in it? Can you make small changes within the organization or the position and allow people that maybe have a small disability to be able to do the position? So when we talk diversity and inclusiveness, doesn't always just mean hiring somebody from another country. So make sure that you can identify and be aware of that diversity, and then act on it. Put modified plans into place, develop and assist diversity and inclusion opportunities within the company, and then always measuring that and keeping an eye on it. How can we become more diverse and inclusive?
Dallas, we have another question. Jenny asked, what is a stay interview?
A stay interview? A stay interview is somebody that maybe you've heard is thinking of leaving the company. And you intersect that and talk with the person, finding out why they want to leave and is there any way that you can keep them. A stay interview can also be something that you do every 6 months with your employees, just making sure that they're feeling valued and giving them the platform to talk with you and see, it's kind of like a check-in, and see how they're doing, making sure that they're comfortable. A lot of times you'll hear that employers are doing state interviews, especially when new hires happen. So maybe their first week you do an interview with them, then 3 months, 6 months, in that year, just really giving them the opportunity to be heard and to make sure that they stay within the company. Good question. All right, so our next slide.
Stella, we actually had another question as well.
Sure.
Kelly would like to know, as far as the confidential survey, can you offer some examples of questions that you'd recommend asking?
Absolutely. So if we go back up to that Star Tribune slide, I think it's number 9. There's a lot of questions. It's the one right before the joke, or right before the funny comic strip. Couple more. There you go. One more. Thank you. Thanks, Rebecca. So here are a lot of questions that you could ask, and just rephrase them and get some responses, or kind of gauge how they interact with them. If you want more specific, I don't know if you guys are members of SHRM, which is the Society of Human Resource Management. They offer free forms as well as free training and different policies and procedures, as well as surveys that you can do with your employees. So it's a great organization. And I know that St. Cloud has a group. It's a Central Minnesota SHRM. And I know Duluth does, but I'm trying to think if there's one in your region. But you could even look up, Minnesota SHRM. They do a state training every year. It's usually in October. And that's a great opportunity for you guys to go and get more training on HR and different opportunities of what the hot topic is, and kind of build your knowledge in HR. And you do not need to be in HR. You could just be a business owner or administration. Any other questions on that?
We did have another question from Marie. She was wondering if you could show the building a talent pipeline slide once more.
That was the one right after the joke, Rebecca.
I was wondering if you wanted to continue through. I mean, I was going to make a note that we'll scroll back through the slides, but they will
Sure.
all be available after the presentation. So maybe you want to continue on at the moment.
Sounds great. And we will share all of these with you as well. And then if you do have specific questions, feel free to reach out to us as well. All right. So everyone should contribute to changing the narrative within their company. Obviously, you have to walk the talk as the owner. And then obviously then the employees, if they get the opportunity to have input, that definitely makes a difference as well. And then everybody is talking the same language, and then that reciprocates out through the company. So what if I'm not sure where to start? Make sure that you're Googling your business. You can even put up Google alerts. So if anybody mentions yourself or your business, that you get alerts. Make sure you're reading the employee reviews and responding to those, especially on Indeed, whether they're good, bad. However, you acknowledging the conversations makes a huge difference. And then survey your current staff and doing those exit interviews. And how do you recruit and onboard new employees? Making sure you have an actual program in place and making the person feel welcome. I've started positions before where my desk wasn't even ready for me, and you're just kind of like, ugh, you know, what I get myself into. So just making sure that you're aware of those small details. Next. So, and again, diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that you're aware of these three and how they tie together. So diversity plus equity plus inclusion equals the belonging, making sure that that is always at the forefront. Diversity is inviting people into the room. Equity is constantly and consistently recognizing and redistributing that power. And inclusion is inviting them to the table to have a voice in developing policies and guidelines affecting their workforce. And here's some information on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Different opportunities for you guys to reach out. In Central Minnesota, we did start a group. It's called Inclusive Workforce Employer, and for short, it's IWE. Great opportunity to learn more about how to be inclusive and how to be aware of different conversations. At this time, we're still building our website, so we do have the Northwest link on there at this time, but if you have questions, you can reach out to myself or Rebecca. And then some other resources that are available within the area. Having the culture and empathy are probably the two hugest pieces that employer must offer. So just kind of being aware of that. And then changing the narrative, you know, be reflective, continually ask yourself what biases could you be having in the moment, create a culture that is open and having conversations, and become a mentor and making sure that you're always available and to participate in company and community discussions, and then hold management accountable. Do we have any questions at this time?
Maria asked if she could see the building a talent pipeline slide. Maria, did you have, or Maria, I'm sorry, did you have a specific question about that slide?
And they do have access to the presentation, is that correct?
They do, yep, it's been sent to everyone already, in fact, so.
Okay.
So Marie, if you don't have that slide deck, please reach out to us and then we'll get it to you by email. Yep, sounds good.
And my email is available as well on this slide. So if you do have questions or concerns or want more details, definitely reach out to us, but I don't want to interfere with Rebecca and her presentation because she's got quite a bit of really good information that I think you guys are really going to enjoy. So I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca at this time.
Great, thanks so much, Della.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Rebecca Perotti. I'm a business service coordinator for Central Minnesota Jobs and Training Services. And I just want to thank you all for having me to share with you today. Just kind of a quick review. Della mentioned a little bit about our organization in the beginning, but CMJTS is the nonprofit employment and training provider for an 11 county service area that does include Isanti, Chisago, Pine, Kanabec, and Mille Lacs County. So what we refer to as Region 7E. Our agency assists a wide range of job seekers, youth and emerging adults, adults and dislocated workers to assist in their career planning, training, and job placement. We work to connect businesses directly with job seekers and with training for their new hires or their current workforce. Our CMJTS region, which you can see kind of in that picture there, stretches all the way from this area where we are to Sherburne and Wright counties, and then over to McLeod, Meeker, Renville, and Candy, Ojai. So places like Hutchinson, Wilmer, Litchfield. And our corporate office is located in the Monticello Career Force office. So in this area, CMJTS has offices in Cambridge, Mora, Malacca, Sandstone, Pine City, North Branch, and we also have a staff person that sometimes travels to Forest Lake. In addition to the work that we do as an agency nonprofit, we also partner in Career Force and with our state employment and training counselors, with education, both secondary and post-secondary, adult education, economic development, and a lot of other community agencies and partners on initiatives that will strengthen individuals, families, businesses, and communities. We're going to talk a little bit today about untapped talent pools. And so there's a lot of information on these slides that I won't go into in depth, but you should be able to access them in the slide deck, to click the links that you'll see to get more information about maybe how to connect with these groups of people or how to find resources that will help you. So I'm going to touch on each of these, and I want to kind of go through them fairly quickly so that we can leave time at the end for some thinking outside the box ideas as well. So as the data shows, even prior to COVID, our area was facing an impending labor shortage, definitely with our aging talent pool. Given that and all that's happened since then, it's really imperative that employers make the effort to reach out further to access talent pools that they may not have thought of using before. The untapped population segments that we've noted here on this slide that you can target tend to have either a higher unemployment rate, or maybe they typically experience lower wages due to their circumstances. Reaching these groups with your marketing might take some extra work and innovation, but often making the effort to employ and retain individuals from these groups will really prove to be worth the investment. The first group that I am going to show you a slide on here, as Luke mentioned, we do not have a large immigrant population here in Region 7E, but it's still important to note these resources so that you can access them as needed to help build a stronger population in your workforce. Noted right at the top of the slide is adult basic education. And while we have that listed here as a way to potentially connect with immigrants, I would ask that you all keep ABE in mind for everyone. Adult Basic Ed is a regional partnership between school districts and assisting adult learners who are typically 17 and over, who are not currently enrolled in a regular school program. Adult Basic Ed can assist people who are looking to improve their basic reading, writing, or math skills, maybe earn a GED or diploma, or finish their high school credits. It might be for improving English language skills or learning more about other topics. In Region 7E, Central Minnesota ABE serves Malacca and Isle. Central Minnesota East ABE serves the school districts of Bram, Cambridge Isanti, Mora, and Princeton. And then the St. Croix River Education District has locations in Willow River, Finlayson, Hinckley, Pine City, Rush City, North Branch, and Chisago Lakes. And again, ABE is a key service for really any individual and also for businesses to upskill existing employees. All right, so the next slide that I have for dislocated or displaced workers. Dislocated workers are those that find themselves currently unemployed due to no fault of their own. Luke mentioned this in his presentation. They may be looking to update skills or transfer skills into a different industry, and often they're really great candidates for on-the-job training with your business. Dislocated workers typically have a wide range of skills and experience to put to work with their next employer. Where might you connect with dislocated workers? You can see there the Minnesota Career website, minnesotaworks.net. That's a free tool that both employers and job seekers can use. As an employer, when you log in there to your account, you can both place jobs on there for people to view. You can also search for resumes. CareerForce, the website shown kind of below that picture, is the newer web platform that is being used with the new branding CareerForce, like Della mentioned, used to be Workforce. And there are a lot of resources there for employers just in general to help with attracting talent. There's a link there that you can see that allows you to list, like if you're having a career fair of some sort, an open house at your business, you can get that listed here so that job seekers and really everyone with web access can see. It also lists different locations on there. You can create an employer profile and CareerForce to just get your business out there a little bit further. In addition, as I mentioned, CMJTS earlier, we serve dislocated workers and other job seekers to help them retool their careers. So whenever possible, we will make direct referrals of individuals who are working with us to your open positions. And that is something that we try real hard to do whenever we can. So connecting with these different resources can really help you to connect with more potential candidates. The next slide talks about underemployed individuals. And so what does that really mean? Typically, underemployment is defined as not having enough paid work or not doing work that makes full use of a person's skills and abilities. In one of Della's slides, she showed you a number of these same resources. These are really opportunities to access programs so that you could work with potential your employees to grow their skills. Keeping in mind too that when we're considering people who are underemployed across the state of Minnesota, often the hardest positions to hire for are those that are paying between $14 and $20 an hour. That might be just a little different for our region directly, but you did see that information that Luke shared about cost of living for our area. So keeping that in mind as you're hiring, you know, people may be earning a wage, but still being underemployed. People who've been in the workforce and attained skills for a while may not really be willing to move laterally or backwards to take a position. Or if they are taking maybe a lesser wage, they might want to develop some new skills so that they can move up in your company to the next level. Further down on the slide there, you can see I've listed CMJTS adult and public assistance employment and training programs and special grant programs. Again, because we serve job seekers, we have a number of programs that we're working with people and helping them on their career path. So we may have access to folks to refer to you. We also seek out special grant programs that target opportunities for more specialized training as well.
Rebecca, we have a question.
Sure.
Penny asks, we are a small optometry business, all women. We are not currently hiring, but when we do, thinking about inclusivity, how would we market to men without being discriminatory? And then a second part of that question says, or even say market to veterans or other groups, is it okay to specifically call them out and ask them to apply?
I don't know if I have the final best answer for that. I would say it's always, you know, important to be somewhat careful in the language that you use and maybe consult with your fellow HR professionals or SHRM to make sure you're using appropriate wording. Encouraging people of all groups to apply, including men, people of color, diverse populations should be okay, but I would say it's important to check your wording so that you're not, I don't know that I have that for you at this very moment, but really do encourage everyone to apply and then kind of find out how you can promote that specifically. Also considering when we get down a little further to some, I think outside the box for your marketing ideas, you know, maybe keeping the message appropriate and, as general as needed to be appropriate and not exclusive, but then considering how you might market the overall information into those different pockets so that your message is for sure reaching the men that you want to reach, even if you're not calling that out as specifically saying we want to hire men. So something to maybe consider. And if other panelists have some suggestions, feel free to throw that in the chat. All right. I hope that answers your question. Moving on to the next segment, or untapped worker pool. Youth and young adults are our future, as we know, and they could be also our current workforce. The labor force participation rate for 16 to 19-year-olds right now is really only at 55%. And they also tend to have the highest unemployment rate of any of the other age groups at 9.9%. Then followed by 20 to 24-year-olds at 8.5% unemployment. So those are higher than the state average. And what that really is pointing out is there is opportunity there to consider how to engage youth and young adults more into your company. If you can engage them and grow them along your industry career pathway, then that can really help meet your business specific business needs. At CMJTS, we do work with youth and young adults starting at age 14 through 24. They get some assistance to maybe complete their education, explore career pathways that meet their skills and interests, consider additional training, both on the job or in a traditional setting. They can get help to do work experiences, kind of thinking of that as a paid internship program through our training funds. Also, as with other job seekers in our programs, we help connect them with career opportunities directly with businesses. That can include on-the-job training, which benefits the business with a wage reimbursement for their training time. It also offers specialized programs such as career camps, outreach to schools, youth build, and others. Other ways to connect with young people, don't forget to connect directly with your local schools. Maybe it could be for filling open positions. It could be to offer mentorship or training, just provide career awareness for your industry. You could be a speaker to share about your business. There's also other formal programs that can be developed, such as a CEO in the classroom program or apprenticeships. There's a couple types of apprenticeship listed there. Certified youth apprenticeships run through the Minnesota Department of Education. There's also youth skills training programs through the Department of Labor and Industry. And I know both here on this slide and in an upcoming slide, we have some information for you about that if you'd like to kind of follow up or certainly connect with Della or I to learn more. Your local colleges are also a valuable talent pipeline, so get to know instructors for programs that train in your industry and ask for student referrals. Remember to post on the college job boards as well and consider maybe hosting interns. There's a few things noted there, innovative areas from other, innovative ideas from other areas in the state. And so we won't have time to go into that now, but please take a look at that. We would love to get some more of these initiatives going in Region 7E. And finally, if you'd like to engage more with youth and young adults, please tell us how you'd like to get involved. You can complete a survey there at the link on the slide to help us gather that information and get you connected. This next slide really is something that a lot of us in the workforce and economic development side of things have been trying to work on for a long time. I'm just thinking about how as we engage with youth and young adults, it's really become evident that helping both students and parents gain an understanding of the importance of all types of career pathways in our economy is critical. Really, no pathway is the wrong pathway. There's a lot of varied options out there that can lead to gainful employment. Education is always valuable, but understanding what kind of education you need for the type of gainful career that matches your skills and interests is really important for young people so that they can avoid adding on costly debt to do things that maybe don't result in what they're best at. Also, we like to try to help get the message out to students and adults too, that often a career pathway is not really a straight line, but it kind of has a series of twists and turns. So being willing to learn and grow throughout your career is a key for success. This next slide here is the one that I mentioned, is just for your reference regarding youth apprenticeships. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time to go into that today, but it gives a little more description and you should be able to take a look at that. Also, the resource links at the bottom on the right are a good place to go for helpful tools, including the Central Minnesota Manufacturers Association at the bottom. They really do have a big list of, they have a K-12 navigator. They have different ways that you can connect and put together programs for youth. All right, the next population pool that I want to touch on is our second chance employees. And you know, noted in the Minnesota Fair Chance Hiring Guide, having a criminal record is one of the leading barriers to employment for people returning from jail or prison in Minnesota. As you know, criminal records are made public for 15 years following the completion of a sentence, which makes it pretty challenging for people that have a past. So even if they've moved on from there, it can really be challenging for them to find employment. But we also know that really one of the best things that we can do to help people reintegrate is for them to have stable employment. So we would encourage you, those employers that can consider second chance or fair chance employees, to take a look at these resources to help you do that. The Minnesota Fair Chance Hiring Guide that I just quoted was created to help employers to successfully navigate in this space. It contains valuable information, a checklist of action steps with resources that can aid in your hiring. And so even if you're just a little curious, give that a look. Also, Fair Chance Employer is a provider of America's most trusted process for evaluating candidates with a criminal record. It can help you to provide documentation necessary that proves your compliance with the EEOC guidelines when hiring people. And then there's a couple programs listed there that specialized in reentry for folks. And then the bottom two bullet points there kind of make note of resources that you can use as you're doing your hiring, both the work opportunity tax credit that applies not just to people with a criminal background, but also for veterans and others. And then there's a federal bonding program that unfortunately goes underused by employers that can kind of help with, you know, some of the risk that it might take that you take on when you're hiring someone with a background. All right. The next group is the older workforce, and I know Luke touched on this as well. You know, while baby boomers have been retiring in droves, we also have learned that there are more people who've accelerated their retirements as a result of COVID. So consider ways that you might keep valuable workers and their knowledge base in the workforce. Some employers have found success by allowing maybe more schedule flexibility and incorporating succession planning into an individual's exit strategy. Some might contract with the retired person to assist on an as needed basis. Connecting new or advancing individuals with mentorship from an experienced worker to pass on their expertise can really help preserve key knowledge and skills into your business. Also, perhaps hiring staff with experience that can work part-time or seasonally could also benefit you as an employer and fill some of your voids, even if it is part-time. Another category of workers that we have here for you to consider is with veterans. Veterans used to have a high unemployment rate in Minnesota, but now with a lot of the programs that you see noted here, veterans are being able to translate their military skills into employer needs. Hiring veterans can really result in dedicated employees who have a developed set of skills and also understand the value of teamwork, leadership, and job skills. So, you know, we would really encourage you to connect directly even with the veterans employment team representative who can share out job leads that you have, take advantage of events and career fairs that target veterans specifically. A number of them are going on, and I believe there is one coming up here now, the end of July as well. individuals with disabilities are really important to consider as well, and sometimes also are overlooked. We want to just remember that disabilities are many and varied. We may not recognize that people have disabilities, and certainly having a disability doesn't mean that someone's not able. Reach out to organizations that are noted here on the slide that work specifically with individuals with disabilities so that you can help connect with them, especially with those who are actively seeking work opportunities. You can see that our agency works with individuals with disabilities to help them get back to work, as well as our partners' vocational rehabilitation services. There are deaf and hard of hearing services, as well as state services for the blind. So we have some specialized organizations in our region too, Phase and Industries Inc., as well as RISE, who all work with individuals with disabilities who are seeking gainful careers at a variety of different levels. As you start to hire or look to do this, if you have questions or you're just not sure, make sure to take advantage of the opportunities through the Job Accommodation Network. People refer to it as JAN, or the one below it, EARN, just to help you with any kind of tools or accommodations that you need to make that transition easier, or to help with a specialized case with an individual so that you can help to fill your open positions and make any accommodations that they need. This next slide here refers specifically to business resources for through CMJTS. When you're considering to reach employees, one more resource in addition to those that we've noted already is through us directly, and I've already mentioned that. We can provide some work-based training for individuals. As you can see there, on-the-job training provides a 50% wage reimbursement for a period of time during the person's training, to help kind of offset the cost of training a new worker. We also have incumbent worker training funds to upskill your current employees. And sometimes those who are seeking some basic job skills, just getting started in the workforce, might be able to participate in a work experience. In that, our agency is able to pay the person's wages and act as the employer of record, and really you as a business place are hosting them and providing them with some skills and mentorship during that temporary experience. So please do reach out directly to get more information about that, so that we can see what best fits for your business. Okay, on the next slide, I'm just kind of asking you to take a reflection moment, and I know we're kind of running short on time, so if it's all right with Michelle, I will maybe just ask you to go ahead and make some notes for yourself as I continue on to the next part.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Rebecca. Thank you.
All right. So as we're going to shift gears now and move to the kind of think outside the box, some ideas for you. So I kind of encourage you to let your mind wander a bit and think about what if you could do something, or consider some new things to try that are different for you and your business. So as we move on here, thinking outside the box about locations to post your jobs. Please take a look at this. Again, the slide will be available to you so you can read it more thoroughly. Kind of going through quickly, what are you currently marketing? Where are you currently marketing your business? Where else could you be doing that? How can you connect with the employees that you need? These are some location ideas. As you post your jobs, consider how you might stand out from all the other help wanted ads so that your information doesn't just get lost in the page of information there, or maybe have a tagline that you can use in your ads that kind of creates interest and questions to those who see your ad to kind of entice them to learn more about your company. You could try creating a tagline that's somewhat of a myth buster in your organization. So for instance, with manufacturing, sometimes people have kind of the wrong picture of what manufacturing's like, but maybe your ad says, "So clean, we can eat off the floor." Now that sounds kind of goofy, but it really might pique someone's interest to learn more about you. Maybe you could also say, "No experience preferred." That can kind of create some curiosity and enthusiasm about your company, kind of makes people wonder if it's really true, and maybe encourages those without experience to check on you. Are you listing what you really need for an employee, or are you listing more than you need? I know Della touched on this as well. So if you tend to list all the must-haves, like I need to have this, 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 and this, you might be eliminating some potential employees who can't check every item off their list. I know we, in working with job seekers, really encourage people to consider how their skills do fit and how their skills can transfer. But if you can eliminate some of that apprehension right off the bat by really listing what you do need and not what you dream about having, that can help to increase those who apply. Also consider how far your employees are driving to work. Are you connected with them if they're coming from other towns or communities or schools? And then just remember to post your open positions everywhere. The Help Wanted and other community pages on Facebook as much as possible. Post and respond about your openings. And you can also use the employer recruitment checklist at the link on the slide, just as a handy resource and idea sheet. You can kind of see those links there. So hopefully some of these things, some of these places you have not tried yet, so that you can kind of come away with something additional to try. The next thing we're going to talk about for outside the box has to do with, thinking outside the box for benefits. So again, we don't have a long time to pause, but I do ask you to kind of think, what kind of benefits do you offer job seekers and employees? You can, as I'm talking, I'm sorry we don't have as long of time to pause, but certainly feel free to stick some of this in the chat box if you'd like to share what kind of things you offer. It's really nice to kind of get different ideas, not just from what we're talking about, but also from others in the group. So feel free to add some of those things as we go through. Not all businesses, I moved my own slide, but not yours. Here we go. All right, so thinking about thinking outside the box about employer benefits. Not all businesses, and especially those of you who are smaller, can offer the highest wages and all the benefits that we sometimes hear about. Most of us have also learned or heard that higher wages don't necessarily guarantee a better worker. So if you could use this list and other ideas you've come across to consider what really works for you and what fits your business size and model, I'd encourage you to do that. So think about what can make your company unique and more desirable. With all that said, I'll kind of ask you if you want to put your answer in the chat, fine, but just kind of think about what do you think might be the one best benefit that you can give to employees? Okay, so you might be surprised to learn that a lot of polls have shown that actually time off is a key benefit that you can offer to people. Time off is an emotional benefit. It ties into people's family and friends. It gives them an immediate gratification. So if you tend to be able to offer more time off than your competitors, it can help people stay during tough times. It can also be a recruitment tool. Considering how to use time off as a referral bonus, another kind of tool. Sometimes monetary bonuses maybe get lost in people's paychecks and kind of goes directly to bills, but some time off can provide them with a different type of reward. Also, a note that we had was to consider having time off that you do provide represent years of experience for an employee. So not just maybe using years of service with your organization. Like if you want someone with experience to work for, if you want someone with experience to work for you, but you make the person with 20 years of experience have the same vacation package as someone who's really new, you might lose some good experienced workers. So is there a way to offer someone coming in with experience a higher rate of benefit for that? And something just kind of odd and off the wall a little bit in some recent conversations lately, some other ideas came up for benefits that really aren't on this slide, but some businesses shared about some people needing help with laundry. So like, pass to the laundromat, or some of their basic needs, maybe a quarterly oil change to keep people's transportation up and running. So just you know, really encouraging you to consider, you know, not just those things that cost you money, but, you know, what are other things that you can do that just make a difference? And here with this slide, kind of thinking about flexibility. So, you know, we talked about one of the things, time off, but is it possible that people's schedules could be somewhat flexible, that they can, you know, maybe it's not fully time off, but, you know, is it flexible? Can you offer some part-time instead of only full-time? Those are just things that we would encourage you to consider as well. All right. The next slide here talks about success stories. Just some examples of other businesses and what they've done. You can see here locally in our area, Nemadji out of Bruno, they actually have an on-site daycare and they have a dining center. They do senior dining out of there. The food there is for the daycare is prepared and employees can work there. Now that's kind of a bigger thing to do if you're really a small business, but it maybe gets your juices flowing for some other ideas. Also, there's been some companies that give a paid day-long interview so job seekers can see and understand the culture and understand the job. There's another company who created an education and training program in partnership with Adult Basic Education, which we mentioned earlier. Yet another one offered a coffee and careers event, kind of a drive-up thing with a free caramel latte and donuts and collecting applications there. So this is just meant to kind of maybe jog your thoughts a little bit and consider some different things, some different ideas for attracting people. All right. So I know I kind of rushed through those last slides a fair amount, and we do have a spot here for takeaways for you to consider some things that you might try within your organization. I know we kind of hope to do a little more discussion around some of your benefits and whatnot. But at this spot, we were going to pause for takeaways, and then my last slide is just resources and questions. So Michelle, did you want to address any of the stuff that people have put in, or are there other questions?
There are no other questions, but people made note of flexible schedules and work from home were things that were a great incentive. Extra floating holiday. You know, I thought if everybody's industry and core staff is sometimes so different from someone else's, so you might ask your employees as a group what kind of incentives they would be interested in receiving. One said, infant in the workplace policies are not beneficial to the family, but the coworkers really enjoy it. I bet they do. I had heard recently that a construction company paid each staff $20 if they showed up for work early. So they were basically buying everyone lunch every day. So depending on the size of your company, that some of those kinds of things may work for you. And we are about right on time. So Rebecca, are you wanting to talk about this slide?
I would just note that these are some resources that we referenced, some additional resources here. And then in the box on the right are some opportunities for you to get a little more involved in resources. So Workforce Wednesdays is something new being put out by DEED and the Workforce Strategy Consultants, the people in Della's position. So they are having a session on the first Wednesdays of each month, and the recordings are available, so go there. And then I also facilitate a human resources group for people who are human resources professionals or those who find themselves doing human resources. And we meet typically the third Thursday of every month from 8 to 9 in the morning. You can email me if you want to be involved. We just kind of have a conversational resource sharing and sometimes some best practice speakers as well. So I want to thank you all for the opportunity to share with you. And I would, like Della, invite you to connect with us to ask more questions. kind of a lot of information to just toss out there, but we're always open to conversations, and I really enjoy doing that, talking with each of you directly.
Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Will you advance the slide one more? Oh, that's great. So we really want to thank you, Rebecca, Della, and Luke, for the great information that you shared. There are a lot of takeaways that people can put into action. So it was really good information. And I wanted to make sure that you all know that as a participant of this event today, there is one-on-one follow-up available through the Small Business Development Center and the Women's Business Alliance. Depending on if you need help integrating some of these things into your business, you can get that at no charge. So please feel free to reach out to us. And the next slide has our contact information. So feel free to send an email to any of us about the information presented today or the one-on-one follow-up, and we will get you directed to the right person. Thank you very much for all of your participation. And remember that August 11th, we are doing another one with the focus on business finances. So that should be interesting as well. Julie Anderholm is going to present for that one, and she has a lot of great information to share as well. This will be on the ecrdc.org website. It does take a few days for us to get it posted there, but please feel free to watch it again or share it with those you might think would like the information. So thank you all for attending. We'll sign off now and have a nice afternoon.